Call the Marathon County Board of Supervisors to order, please. We'll start with the Pledge of Allegiance. Please remain standing. Following the Pledge of Allegiance will be a silent moment of reflection. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. We will have the reading of the notice, please.
An educational meeting of the Marathon County Board of Supervisors will be held at the Marathon County Courthouse Assembly Room, 500 Forest Street, Wausau, at 6 p.m. on Thursday, July 17th, and the agenda was duly signed and posted.
Thank you. I'd like to also request everyone please silence your cell phones and any other electronic devices, not to be an interruption to the meeting, and I thank you for your indulgence. And we'll move on to roll call, please. If we could please ask everyone to sign in. Thank you, and I'd like to welcome all of the visitors that we have with us this evening, including the viewing audience, and thank you for your interest in county government. And we'll move on to public comment, not to exceed 15 minutes, and 3 minutes will be allocated to each individual speaking. And we have one individual who has signed up, Mr. Peter Weinschenk. Mr. Weinschenk, please come to the podium and address your comments to the chair, please.
Good evening, Chairman Gibbs. My name is Peter Weinschenk. I live at 625 North 4th Avenue, Edgar, and I am here to ask you to do something about tax incremental finance, TIF. Earlier this month, I had hoped that the Extension, Education, and Economic Development Committee was going to send you a resolution that addressed the problems identified by the county's TIF task force, but unfortunately, it did not. Instead, it sent you a status quo TIF resolution nearly identical to the one this body rejected last month. My request is that you not support this resolution. Instead, you should either amend or refer the resolution to a new committee, the Human Resources, Finance, and Property Committee. The EED committee resolution fails to do two things. First, it fails to mandate that the Joint Review Board follow 10 Department of Revenue recommended best practices. Instead, it says that the JRB need only consider these practices, meaning that they can be ignored. Second, the resolution fails to tell the Joint Review Board to calculate taxpayer repayment when setting the lifespan of a new tax incremental district, TID. I propose that all new TIDs repay taxpayers within 38 years. You should reject the EED committee resolution because TIF in Marathon County is out of control. There's $1.4 billion worth of county TIF property in 2024. That's 12% of all city and village property in Marathon County. This is over 8 times the county value of TIF in 2000. State law says that no municipality can have more than 12% of its taxable value in TIF, but 6 municipalities have more than 22%. 1/3 of all county TIDs have had to have their lifespans extended. Further, taxpayers have to wait an entire lifetime before they can see full TIF payback. In the city of Wausau's TID number 12, for example, I calculate that a 33-year-old buying an average priced home doesn't get paid back until he or she is 90 years old. Some people say TIF is an economic development workhorse. Fine, but you have to repay the taxpayers. That's state law. This means you need somebody to calculate taxpayer ROI. And this calculation needs to be part of a TID project plan sent to the Joint Review Board. So I request you do something with TIF. If you fail to impose reasonable limits on TIF now, it will become something local government will never be able to control. TIF always wants more. It is never satisfied. Do not support the triple ED committee resolution, amend it, or send it to the HR, Finance, and Property Committee. Thank you.
Thank you. Not having any other individuals signing up for public comment, we will move on to item 8 on the agenda, educational presentations and/or reports under item 8A, standing committee chairs or designees. Any reports by standing committee chairpersons or designees? Supervisor Robinson, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just would like to invite all of the members of the board to the Human Resources, Finance, and Property Committee meeting next Tuesday. Baker Tilly will be there presenting our audit, so if you can't make it in person, I would encourage you to watch that. We'll be getting our audit for last year, which will drive our, among other things, our KIP expenditures in a year and a half, and other things, but I think it's just a good summary of where we've been. So I encourage you to participate either in person or remotely.
Okay, any other standing committee chairpersons or designees? All righty, we will move on then to item 8B, a discussion on the known budget assumptions. Administrator Leonard and/or Chair Robinson. I'll hand it to Chair Robinson first, please.
Thank you. As part of our Budget 101, we talked about the development of budget assumptions and ultimately budget priorities for next year. And we've been meeting with the various committees to go over some of those priorities and levels of services and mandated versus non-mandated services, as well as the fees to support those. But the topic for you tonight is the budget assumptions that go into developing the 2026 budget. And the art of putting together the process of putting together a budget is really a form of art, because there are moving parts versus, it's not exact science. Things will change. Invariably, the general transportation aid numbers will change, net new construction may change. But what we try to do is deal with some of that uncertainty, and I know through the development of assumptions that may be conservative in nature, but at least help the administrator provide guidance to the department heads relative to their submission of budgets and ultimately for his preparation of the budget that he will share with us at the end of September. It is a dynamic process with those moving parts. We will, kick the tires on health insurance. The administrator will go into some of the specifics. I know we've talked in the past and continue to talk about our energy costs. Can we lower the amount of kilowatt hours or kilowatts or therms used by county government in an effort to try to hold down energy costs? Where are we going with health insurance? What are some of the trends and other things? But the assumptions, which again the administrator will cover, will be used to guide the development of them by the departments. We will be finalizing the assumptions and presenting those on Tuesday. We started that process last time, and we asked for additional information, and then we look forward to input from the committees relative to the priorities and spending and fees going forward. Administrator Leonard.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'll, through the budget process, as the chair referenced, and we talked a lot about at the orientation, one of the messages that I give invariably every year to staff is a challenge that we need to be even more efficient than we were last year. So I'm going to try to keep with that message with my presentation to all of you today. So to be very, very efficient, I'm not going to go over all the budget priorities and assumptions that I went over with HR Finance. I'm going to send out a link later tonight with the presentation to show, as Chair Robinson referenced, just some of the conversation that was had, because again, those budget assumptions and the priorities are being finalized by HR Finance at their meeting next week. with the intent that they be brought forward to the full board for a vote on Tuesday. However, I want to emphasize the last message that I think the Chair Robinson, Committee Chair Robinson just gave. These budget assumptions are the first, one of the initial steps of the budget. We know these numbers, a lot of these numbers are going to change. So I'm not going to spend a great deal of time this evening going through what those were, but I'll pull up the HR Finance and Property Committee packet from last week, and I'll just talk a little bit through the chart. This is going to be a very similar chart that's up on the screen, is going to be brought forward for the consideration by the committee next week and ultimately to the full board. And I just want to highlight two things that, again, demonstrate this is an iterative process. We get new numbers as this process moves forward. Again, net new construction is an estimate. Sales tax, we certainly don't know what we're going to get. But I want to highlight two. Shared revenue. Up until the budget was adopted, the shared revenue number that we were projecting for 2026, we thought was a hard number. But for all of you that were on the WCA call on Monday, you know that through the budget process, the state budget process, additional items were added to the non-taxable or non-sales tax. They were sales tax exempt through the budget process. Most notably, expenditures related to utilities, individual utility payments. What that did was it dropped our number. So the number we thought we knew through the budget process, on our WCA call on Monday, they referenced that that percentage was going to be reduced. If you were on that call, you'll recall that the WCA representative, the communications director that was giving the call, referenced that I asked them to do a thing. I asked them to send out new estimates to all the counties with what that known number now is going to be based on the budget action. So that's going to change. That hopefully we'll have that updated by the HR Finance and Property Committee meeting next week. But if not, that's one of those things that, again, demonstrates this is initial guidance to me as the administrator, but a lot of this changes. It's a very, very fluid and iterative process. The second one that I'll reference on this chart is the expenditure assumption relative to other insurance. You'll note on the document that's up on the screen that was in the HR Finance and Property packet, 16.5% increase. That is not the increase we're going to see. And that was a topic that HR Finance brought up, and there was concern, and rightly so. That's a big percent increase. That was based on the information that our legal and risk manager within Corporation Counsel's office got from our broker. That's based on what the market is showing. And that shouldn't be surprising, right? We've seen a lot of inflation, a lot of valuation increases, and we've had a lot of new buildings within Marathon County come online that we need to make sure are insured appropriately. But that's the market generally. We're going to work with, throughout the budget process, we're going to work with our actual insurance provider, primarily our property insurance provider, to mitigate that impact. But that is, at the time, it's the best number we have to help get something on paper so that Sam and our department head team, when we sit down and start building the individual departmental budgets, we have a place to start. So if you leave with nothing else from my budget assumption brief presentation today, apart from the fact that I'll send you a link with a lot more information from that previous presentation, these numbers will undoubtedly change. The second piece is, I'll send you within that link, is the discussion about the budget priorities that the HR Finance and Property Committee is going to finalize hopefully next week. I won't, again, rehash my presentation, but if you leave with nothing else, please understand this. The top priority from my perspective and speaking with my team is employee compensation. I say that frequently, that our employees are our greatest tool in the work that we do. We deliver services to all of the people of Marathon County. We need really good people to do that. Little bit of history, and this is in the presentation that I made to HR Finance. We implemented a wage scale in 2023. You adopted it in 2022 with early 2022 data. No changes have been made to that. That scale has not shifted since 2022. Think about what has changed since 2022 relative to, let's pick the housing market, because it's indicative of the wage market. You've seen significant equalized valuation increases over those years, 12%, 11%, 8%. Wage increases haven't been, in the global market, haven't been that significant, but our scale hasn't moved. So it shouldn't be surprising that our consultant, when we're doing the true up that was called for in my annual work plan, our initial estimate is that scale needs to have a pretty significant shift in the neighborhood of 10%. The scale needs to move. We're working to finalize what that means for a cost to implement, but that's the reason I put it at the top of the list. So again, if you leave with nothing else, I'll send you the priority presentation link as well. These two conversations, priorities and assumptions, bookended each other. But that's the reason. So again, that's the highlights of my presentation. We'll have more definitive costing relative to the implementation and our strategy to implement the updated compensation plan. Hopefully we'll have that. My goal is, Molly and I met with the consultant earlier today, that we'll have that at the HR finance meeting in August to have those cost estimates and give that information. But this is all part of that budget development process. It's iterative. You don't have to adopt it until November.
Okay, questions? Supervisor Robinson, please.
Just to try to bring this to a conclusion, we view the assumptions as sort of an opportunity for us to focus our efforts. You know, when we saw last year what the health insurance costs would be, you know, it sort of drove our behavior to start a wellness clinic to try to lower those costs. We're exploring different options relative to property and casualty. Relative to utility costs, we're looking at, can we get Thomas Street and River Drive off the grid, if you will, so we're not paying for the utilities at those facilities. So we're using the assumptions as sort of driving behavior and trying to reduce our cost where we can. So they are important. Some of them are beyond our control. The Wisconsin retirement system, shared revenues, general transportation aid, those will be set by the state, and we'll have to deal with those as they hit our budget. But there are opportunities for us to look at certain areas and make some changes, and hopefully have a better budget at the end of the process.
Okay, open it up for any questions. Again, the next Tuesday, we'll have the HR Finance Committee. We'll continue the discussion on the budget assumptions. We'll move on then to item number 9, review and discussions of voting meeting items. Under 9A, ordinances. Item 9A1, Town of Gunther rezone. Stephen Guile. Ordinance 33-25. Any questions? All right, moving on to item 9A2, Town of McMillan rezone, David Felkowski and Adding Acres LLC, ordinance 34-25. Any questions? Okay, moving on to item 9A3, speed limit reduction, County Highway Y, Town of Reed, Pike Lake, ordinance 35-25. Any questions? Supervisor Sandalski, please.
Thank you, Chair. So I got a similar situation I was going to talk about, actually quite similar. So I've lived in my property at my house here, which is on the outside of a 90-degree corner for about 21 years. There has been numerous people missing the corner and getting stuck in my yard. Some hit and runs, some I have had the sheriff's department out there as well. Average probably about 1 per year, some years 2 to 3 in my yard. The last 2 years, I've actually had my the cable internet box was snapped off twice in those 2 years. As far as I know, all incidents were were drivers under the influence of alcohol and or drugs. Several years ago, they actually reduced the speed in my area from 45 to 35. And from my perspective, dealing with these issues, I actually didn't see much of a change. I may be wrong. But I believe reduction in the speed limit is not really going to solve any of these crashes. Intoxicated and inattentive drivers are probably the real problem. And according to our packet, I was looking there, it said the average speed was between 45 and 49 on the 2 studies they have done. So just from my perspective, I don't believe that reducing it from 55 to 45 will solve the issues, but I could be wrong. Thank you.
Any other questions? Any other discussion? Okay, we'll move on to item 9B, resolutions. Under 9B1 from the Environmental Resources Committee, item 9B1A, the Town of Wausau Comprehensive Plan Amendment, Resolution 43-25. Any questions? Okay, item 9B1B, the Town of Wausau rezone commercial and light manufacturing to agricultural, resolution 44-25. Any discussion? All right, moving on to item 9B1C, adoption of the Wausau to Merrill Trail Master Plan, Resolution 45-25. Any questions? Supervisor Wilhelm, please.
Thank you, Chair. I was able to talk to a Lincoln County supervisor, and he said they adopted the plan. They had adopted a plan on the trail, but he said that the numbers they had for what it was going to cost were pretty high. Has there been any talk of that yet, or is it just?
We have the Parks Director here. She'll be able to try to give you some kind of update as to what we do have and what we don't have in that plan at this point.
Thank you. So the plan that we did is a conceptual plan, but it does have cost estimates in it. It's a 15.5-mile trail, so the cost is significant, but what this is it just a master plan that was identifying the corridor that potentially could be the trail from Wausau to Marathon County, so it doesn't obligate the county board to any construction of any segments at this time or any funding. It just gives a rough estimate of the trail and different segments throughout. And there are some alternative options in the trail as well. We identified some property owners that may not be supportive of the trail at this point. We identified some topography areas that we would need to reroute, or the cost would be even more significant because of water or the river. So depending upon what our opportunities are in the future, this plan just kind of shows that guideline. If there were land available in the future, or if WPS was to develop their corridor that was kind of identified as a potential segment for this trail, or if there were other uses along that we could potentially start building out the segments, but all of that would be kind of based on that plan, and the plan is subject to change, but any construction or any land acquisition would always come through this board first before that takes place and funding would be identified. So it does in the plan show some cost estimates.
All right, thank you.
Supervisor Gisselman, please.
Yes, thank you. The master plan was not in the packet, or did I not see it? I was curious as to, maybe I just missed it, but it wasn't with the specific. And I think that would be a nice thing to have in the future.
I can send that out.
I can stand corrected if that's true.
No, I didn't look to see if it's in the packet. It was in the environmental resources packet. I'll send that link out with my link that I'm going to send to the full board relative to the HR, Finance, and Property Committee packets. But it was
Right,
packet.
thank you, because I think in order for us to support this, and we should know what it's about. Will there be any obligations with regard, because it says pretty much no fiscal impact at this point in time, but is it anticipated in county administration and in the park department that there may be some point in time with regard, because I'm sure that all the municipalities up and down the Wisconsin River will be looking and being asked for some funding for this. It's a big project, and the city of Wausau, as well as I'm sure the town of Texas and the city of Maryland, Lincoln County are going to be involved. But I think at this point in time, identifying and knowing that that there's going to be a large project involved, I think we should start to anticipate that somewhere down the road, because it's being planned now, it's being talked about. So I think the county board at some point in time would like to know if there's some obligation. I think that it's a project that's been talked about, I know at least in the city of Wausau, and I think that we should be prepared, I think, to know that there may be some fiscal impact. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? Thank you, Jamie. Supervisor Ritter, excuse me.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just kind of following up Supervisor Gissem and all the other questions. It's kind of been my understanding at committee level that there are outside interests, outside entities that have interest in this project. And pretty much all we're really approving with this time is just to let them get the ball rolling. Give them, that way they can just show that Marathon County could possibly be behind this, just to kind of help them persuade other people to put their money in it and not ours. And at this point, they're not asking for any money from Marathon County. And kind of like Jamie said, that if there would be any money that would be needed, it's got to go through this board first. So pretty much we're just letting them get the ball rolling.
Any other discussion? Okay, then we'll move on. Thank you, Jamie. From item 9B2, Extension Education Economic Development Committee. Item 9B2A, a resolution providing direction to Marathon County's representative on tax incremental. Oops, excuse me, we'll go backwards to item 9B1D, an adoption of the Marathon County Solid Waste Environmental Management Plan, Resolution 46-25. And I didn't mean to leave the Solid Waste Director out of the discussion this evening. Supervisor Robinson, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I intend to support this plan. It's trying to deal with the issue of PFAS that are in the leachate at the landfill, and they're running into the problem of what to do with it. The normal process would be to haul it to a wastewater treatment plant for treatment. The problem is we're basically sequestering it, and it winds up in effluent into the river or biosolids that are land spread. And I think there are fewer and fewer wastewater treatment plants across the state that are willing to accept leachate from landfills because of the presence of PFAS. So they're kind of caught, and what this proposal would do is create or submit an application to receive funding through the Clean Water Fund to deal with the treatment through reverse osmosis, basically concentrating the amount of PFAS into a smaller quantity and recirculate that at the landfill and hoping that the organic material will absorb a lot of it. It's a good thing. Marathon County generates about 50,000 gallons a day. This proposal is to have 100,000, have the capacity for 100,000 and accept leachate from Portage and Shawano counties, which is a good thing because you'll have some economies of scale. My concern about this is not over the request and the funding, and there is a pot of money on the federal level for emerging contaminants that would result in principal forgiveness and basically turning a loan into a grant. But we need to, if we're going to go into this strategically with other counties, we need to look at our own Chapter 2 of our county ordinance calling for joint venture agreements. And I would hope that we'd work on a joint venture agreement with both Portage and Shawano counties so that they're long-term partners in both the funding of it and the continued operation of it. And we've expressed this concern at the ERC meeting as well as at the hearing with the Solid Management Board. So we would look to the ERC committee to implement the provisions of that joint venture agreement and hopefully get a long-term commitment from both those other counties in dealing with this very important issue.
Supervisor Ritter, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I agree 100% with Supervisor Robinson. The only thing I'll add is basically what we're kind of trying to do is stay ahead of the game. If all at once we get to the point where these other wastewater treatment facilities say, cut us off, well, then what do we do with our leachate? We're stuck. We have no way to go. So this is just, again, to get things going so we can ask for funding, so we can stay ahead of the game, so we don't get caught with a whole bunch of leachate that we have nothing to do with. So I will be supporting it as well.
Other questions? Supervisor Corvelli, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just curious on what the lifespan of the waste site is.
As far as the landfill?
Yes.
Director, please. We have Director Hagenbuscher here, and so he'll give you at least an educated guess as to the...
So we have, the lifespan of the landfill.
Gotta turn it on. Yeah. There you go.
So the lifespan of the landfill itself, that's a tough question to answer. Right now, we have approximately 600 acres of solid waste property, and right now 75 of those acres are actual landfill footprint. We have another 30-acre cell that has been planned and approved by the DNR that we haven't even started constructing yet. That'll take us well into another 15 to 20 years into the future.
Supervisor Robinson, please.
I think one of the reasons why we need the joint venture agreement is that there are ongoing responsibilities relative to the continued maintenance beyond the closure date. And so we need to have that joint venture agreement in to spell out the responsibilities of the other counties when they're not generating waste or leachate that's coming to the facility. So I think that, you look at it for closure plus 40, potentially 40 years. And these are forever chemicals that don't break down quickly. So it is important for the county's perspective to have that long-term agreement.
Other discussion? Okay. We'll now move on to item 9B2A, a resolution providing direction to Marathon County's representative on tax incremental district joint review boards and Marathon County administration regarding Marathon County's evaluation of future proposed tax incremental districts. Resolution 36-25. Any discussion? Supervisor Sandalski, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I just have one question for Administrator Leonard. So the property taxpayers, Marathon County, have paid extra tax to cover these properties which are under the TID districts. According to last month's one of the resolutions that was presented to the EEDC, saying it's costing an average of around $300 per taxpayer. My question is, as these TID districts close, are you going to propose that the amount of a reduction in the county property tax Pierce levy is equal to the amount of tax received from these TID districts closing. For example, if we close a few TID districts at $100,000 to the county, will we see a reduction in their annual tax bills through the reduction in the levy? That's all.
I appreciate the question. The short answer is I don't get to decide what happens with after a TID closure. That's driven by state statute, how the apportionment process works, both while the district exists and upon closure. It's driven by state statute. The follow-up to what occurs when a TID does close, effectively, the simple explanation is it is similar to net new construction in that it is spreading, it is going to drive down that overall rate across the entire county when that TID closes and that additional taxable valuation comes online. Is that fair, Sam? Anything else to add? Sorry to put you on the spot. She's nothing else to add.
Okay, Supervisor Pfeffrick is next.
Thank you, Chair. The conversation about how much tax increment financing or TIDs are costing residents and taxpayers in Marathon County, I believe, is flawed, in that it assumes the same level of development would occur regardless of TIF being used. One of the main components and one of the things that's reviewed by the Joint Review Board is this development would not happen but for the financial support of TIF. This means the project is not economically viable without the use of TIF, meaning the project would not happen or at the magnitude. This would leave us with dilapidated buildings and blight within our communities. While it is true that a successful TID is going to increase property taxes for properties, meaning commercial, industrial, and residential, while the district is active, the tax increment, meaning the difference between the original and new property tax revenue, is captured and reinvested within that district. Most of the costs to the taxpayer are associated with public safety and government services. At the same time, investment in infrastructure is a common expenditure in a project plan. This saves property taxpayers money. Instead of having to use general fund money to pay for road improvements, the tax increment district money is used from a new development that would have not occurred otherwise. Further limiting the use of TIF would undermine the competitiveness of municipalities in Marathon County as we strive to become the most prosperous county in Wisconsin. In a competitive state and national landscape, restricting this already limited economic development tool could result in missed opportunities, stagnant growth, and diminished quality of life for our residents. I'm increasingly frustrated by the continual complaints and questions about the county's efforts in economic development. Instead of focusing on the criticisms, let's work together to find constructive ways to encourage growth and make progress, not create additional obstacles. We had a good discussion at Economic Development Committee, and this ordinance and the discussion has provided a good basis for our finance director to make an informed decision at Joint Review Board. Thank you.
Supervisor Rosenberg, please.
Yeah, I'll be voting against this this resolution as it does nothing. It's been hollowed out. From when I was on the task force, we had certain objectives we wanted to achieve and not extend out these TIDs, and this does not do that, and it doesn't ensure that the criteria for accepting it is required. It has no point. There is, whether you pass it or whether you don't pass it, doesn't make any difference at all on what we're doing. But the task force wanted to make sure we shorten up the time limits and that we're not, that we're responsible for closing those TIDs out. And this doesn't do that. This just leaves us where we are currently. And I'll be asking for amendments to have those pay back at 38 years. And what's the other one? That it's required that they meet the 10 standards, not just considered. Thank you.
Other discussion? Okay, we'll move on then. Item 9B3 from the Executive Committee. Item 9B3A, a resolution delegating the authority to enter into settlement agreements with opioid defendants to designate county officer and/or officers, Resolution 47-25. Okay, item 9B4 from the Health and Human Services Committee and Transportation Coordinating Committee, a resolution supporting legislative action for volunteer driver's license, Resolution 48-25. Supervisor Sandalski, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So are those, is that going to be paid for by the state or by the county? As far as getting legislation going for it, is this going to be like a state funded thing or a county funded thing? I'm just curious.
Well, the volunteers volunteer, and what they're asking for is legislation to allow that their insurance carry. Administrator Leonard?
I was just going to scroll to that section. My understanding of the resolution that's being called for, and it came out of, I believe, the Transportation Coordinating Committee, is to request that the state, through the Office of Insurance, make modifications to the insurance law to essentially treat volunteer drivers in such a way that they are not classified as commercial drivers. Under the current law, this is an oversimplification, but they're essentially lumped into commercial drivers, like if you drove for Uber or Lyft, which then increases their premiums, their insurance payments, making it really not financially viable for them to serve as a volunteer because they're only getting reimbursed mileage. So the ask is for the state to address that challenge, to increase the number of people that see volunteering to provide rides as viable.
So they can get just under a standard insurance then instead of?
I think that's the general request, is to look at having it handled more through your standard insurance policy as opposed to being classified as a commercial driver.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, item 9B5, Human Resources, Finance and Property Committee and Infrastructure Committee. A resolution to approve expenditures to replace the condenser unit AHU 13, Resolution 49-25. Supervisor Jensen, please.
Thank you, Chair. I had a question on the air handler unit. How old is it currently, and what's the current life expectancy if we're just replacing one component of the system?
We got Facilities and Management Director, Mr. Holman. Mr. Holman, please.
It's a good question on the age of the air handler itself. I'd have to look back at that specifically and get back to you. But the condenser part of the overall unit being a component of the chilling that the air handler is moving the chilled air around the facility, that's on the project list for 2027. And that's what basically raised this issue, was that the other equipment has a longer length of life, that you wouldn't want to replace it sooner because the ROI, I guess, if you will, in terms of what's left in its life expectancy, isn't going to affect the things in the same way that this particular request would, and that you'd save the $100,000 by avoiding the need to replace all associated equipment with the air handler just to swap out the condenser that's at its end of life. So this particular component is just one piece of the overall cooling system. But due to it's a change in the industry, and the manufacturers are having to switch to a different refrigerant, which means you can't just swap out a condenser one for one anymore. You'd have to swap out the entire system as a whole. So this is, to your point, if we saw that there was you could realize the same sort of savings by trying to swap everything out all at once, we would bring it forward. But we expect the air handler to last long beyond, what we'd expect for the condenser itself. So that's why only the one component is brought forward.
Other questions? Okay, moving on to item 9B6 from Human Resources, Finance and Property Committee, a request. Item 9B6A, a request for consent to use PFA for taxable conduit financing. The BBL Kresge LLC Resolution 50-25. Supervisor Gisselman, please.
Yes, thank you. What is this all about? I noticed that I speak specifically to the City of Wausau's 300 block, and they're using the word renovation. That strikes questions in my mind with regard to exactly what they're going to be doing. As you may or may not know, the 300 block of 3rd Street in the city of Wausau is historic, as well as the downtown. And I'm very sensitive to specifically the word renovation with regard to what's happening on this block in downtown Wausau. So do we have anything more, or I know this is a conduit. I get the finance. I get the role of financing. I get that. I'm just concerned about the project itself, because if it, to what extent there is renovation with regard to the gross amount of money that they're asking to finance this whole project with. That is my question. With regard to, and I know that this would go through a variety of other City of Wausau steps, but I'm still curious. I'm not sure if the City of Wausau knows exactly what this is about either, and I think that's why I raised the issue. I raised the questions. I think I personally need to know what this development is going to be all about. Thank you.
There's a memo in your packet. The short answer is I don't have any additional information relative to the specifics of the renovation or the project itself other than what is in the packet. You have the resolution in the packet as well as a memo. I anticipated that there was going to be a question very similar to what you asked. What information can you give about the project? At HR Finance, I anticipated that, and that's why there's a memo in your packet to the full board. Essentially, the memo recounts the information that came from council for the potential conduit borrower relative to the nature of the project and what they perceive as the potential benefit. Relative to the City of Wausau, also in the memo, I reached out to the City of Wausau and the Village of Rothschild. My understanding is that the Village of Rothschild actually did vote to approve conduit issuance. I believe that was earlier this week, and that the mayor expressed to me that he was going to sign the authorization for conduit issuance once that was reviewed by the city attorney based on the information he had. So that is on page 68 and 69 is the 2-page memo that I drafted. The resolution is immediately prior to that.
Okay, Supervisor Marshall.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This area that is being redeveloped, at least the part that is in Wausau, is in TID District Number 3. At HR Finance, the narrative given was this is going to generate sales tax, but also property taxes. If it's in TID 3, we will not benefit from those property taxes. Also, I believe the principal was of BBL Kresge had an issue at the Village of Weston for unpaid property taxes relative to a Weston development agreement. So I guess I would want to know that his taxes are current on any and all properties that he has in Marathon County. If the administrator could let us know if that's the case.
I can certainly get that information, and Supervisor Marshall did email me to clarify the question she had. And relative to TID 3, I can work to overlay that map. A portion of the properties listed in the resolution are within TID number 3, but of course the map for TID number 3, there's been a lot of work in that area relative to the mall, so the map doesn't quite line up. And I'm not going to give my characterization of whether it's a majority of the property, but I'll get a map as well to kind of lay out that issue.
Other discussion? Supervisor Rosenberg, please.
Refresh my memory here. The conduit piece, is there a maximum dollar cap for that we can do in this way?
No.
Annually or whatever it is?
The conduit issuance process through Public Finance Authority is, as I understand it, and this will be, I don't know if it'll be accurate or precise, but certainly not precise. It's not governed by the municipality. This is outside of this type of conduit issuance through Public Finance Authority, through PFA, is not governed by a function of our borrowing capacity. It does not infringe on our borrowing capacity. It does not obligate the county in any way to repayment. It is a function of a overall amount that is able to be lent by the Public Finance Authority to entities not only within the state of Wisconsin, but across the entire country. In fact, Kim is actually, Marathon County we have the great honor of signing all of the PFA authorizations for the entire country. So we get those, I don't know how often you get them, Kim, but every week she's signing those. So again, short answer, it's not an issue. It's not a bond issued by Marathon County. Doesn't say Marathon County issued bond. Like I wrote in my memo, it doesn't really obligate this. It doesn't obligate the county, city, or village to any future obligation or current obligation.
There is a limit on tax-exempt municipal bonds issued, but that's a state level limit. These are taxable bonds, so these are outside of that tax-exempt limit also.
I just, part of my question is, are we going to keep seeing these couple every month? Why not? I mean,
there are still limits under statute as to who qualifies for the various types of financing, both state statutes relative to the non-taxable bonds that Chair Gibbs referenced, but also IRS rules relative to the taxable bonds. So it's not as though everyone that would otherwise go to a private financing institution, a bank, or some other lender is going to, this is my characterization, it's unlikely that you're going to have some flood of these. That said, you certainly have, over the last 2 years, seen more of these than you had over the preceding 5 since I've been in county administration. And I think that's a function of the increased cost, of capital.
I'm assuming I'm not really going to get a clear picture of all this without doing a lot of research into tax laws and finance, and I'm sort of left in the dark just because I won't spend that kind of, hundreds of hours trying to figure it out. Thank you.
Supervisor Sandalski, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So my question is this similar to the other conduit bonding we have done? I was just curious as to what the reasoning is why these different entities go for the conduit bonding versus going to a private lender in that matter. Is it a cheaper rate, or is there a reason? I'm just kind of want to get a take on that.
Again, I don't want to speak for a prospective borrower, but my sense is, yes, it is driven by the cost of capital. If they can get financing at a less expensive rate going through the Public Finance Authority, and in this instance, it's a taxable bond, versus going through private equity financing. I mean, that's, if any one of us were running a business, I think that's what we do. They don't qualify, it doesn't at least appear that they qualify for non-taxable bonds, or that, to Chair Gibbs's point, there's not non-taxable bonds available. So this is a better cost of financing than they would be able to get on the private equity market, is my assumption. Otherwise, if they didn't have a reason, and that reason being financial reason, to come and ask for the authorization from the 3 municipalities of jurisdiction, I don't know why they would.
Other questions? Okay, we'll move on then to item 9B, 6B, a resolution adopting the Fund Balance Policy Resolution 51-25. Any questions? Supervisor Robinson, please.
I'd like to thank administration and in particularly Sam Fensky for their work on trying to develop the working capital policy. What we've done is try to capture some of the concerns that were raised last time relative to our fund balances, and I think we've got better definition as a result of this policy. But some of the important changes, we'll have that reserve policy for working capital, and then restricted funds and others. And once the audit is done, we'll bring additional clarity as to what that means to the various fund balances. But one of the new parts is creating a sort of dedicated contingency fund for certain departments in here, including the Sheriff's Department and others, as a way of trying to incentivize good behavior and not spending all of their money at the end of the year. So it will go into effect on January 1st of next year, but they won't see the contingency until the following year to deal with unanticipated consequences, whether it's the clerk of courts, the DA's office, CPZ, or a limited number, veteran services, a limited number, and then the Sheriff's Department, jail, and in operations. But all other departments would go through the county's contingency fund, and it's something that we'll be tracking and looking at on a long-term basis as to its effectiveness. But we'll look for additional information and clarification on how this impacts our various fund balances as we go through, post-audit and prepare for the budget.
Okay, other questions? All right, we're down to item 10, announcements and/or requests. Administrator Leonard, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just have 2 announcements, and bear with me. I actually wrote them down so I remember. First, on your meeting next Tuesday, there will be an amendment, a budget amendment that is going to be addressed at HR Finance at their meeting next week. So it will be on the county board agenda for approval. There will be a memo in the packet. In short, CPZ got a grant that we need to sign by, I believe it's the end of the month. So just watch for that if there's a new agenda item that surprises you, because it's not on your agenda today. That is the reason for that. And then second, as you all know, the board allocated funds to assist in the provision of emergency shelter services with the city of Wausau as part of its budget amendment this year. I've had the opportunity to volunteer at that shelter, and I know everyone else, you all have that opportunity. It was certainly an eye-opening experience for me. I think it may be of value to you. I know the Health and Human Services Committee is going to be addressing potential continued funding in a variety of ways at its next meeting. I have had contact with the Wausau Police Department and their representatives. They have a number of openings on July 30th, and I will send, again, when I send my email to all of you, I will put in the contact information should you wish to engage the city, that individual from the city to schedule a time, but they certainly utilize volunteers each and every day that that shelter is in operations. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay, any other announcements and/or requests? Any other announcements and/or requests? Okay, we are down to item number 11. Motion by Supervisor Seefeld, second by Supervisor Cavelli to adjourn. All those in favor of adjournment signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say no. The motion is carried and we stand adjourned. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.